The moment Daniel Wright saw the woman walk through that cafe door with a toddler on her hip, he knew he had a choice: run or stay. Most men would have already been halfway to their car. But Daniel wasn't most men. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that this rainy Tuesday night in Seattle would unravel everything they thought they understood about family, trust, and second chances. Because sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary endings. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. This is how it all began. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday evening, turning Seattle's streets into rivers of reflected light. Daniel Wright sat alone in the corner booth of Cafe Luminosa, watching droplets race down the window while his coffee grew cold. He checked his phone for the fourth time in 10 minutes. 7:47 p.m. She was 17 minutes late. He shouldn't have agreed to this. Blind dates were Jessica's thing. His late wife had loved the romance of chance encounters, the thrill of possibility. But Jessica had been gone for 3 years now, and his sister Emma had finally worn him down with her relentless optimism and thinly veiled concern about his hermit lifestyle. "Daniel, you can't spend the rest of your life in that house with just Sophie and memories," Emma had said over brunch 2 weeks ago. "Mara's a friend of a friend. She's smart, kind, and she gets it. Single parent, just like you. Just coffee. What's the worst that could happen?" The worst, Daniel thought grimly, was exactly this. Sitting alone in a crowded cafe on a Tuesday night, clearly being stood up, while couples around him laughed and leaned into each other with the easy intimacy he'd once taken for granted. He'd left 4-year-old Sophie with Emma for this. His daughter had cried when he left, clutching her stuffed elephant and asking why Daddy had to go out when it was story time. "Just 1 hour, princess," he'd promised, kissing her forehead. "And then I'll be home to read you 3 stories instead of 2. Now that hour was almost up, and he had nothing to show for it except a lukewarm latte and the familiar weight of loneliness settling back onto his shoulders like an old coat. He pulled out his wallet, ready to leave cash on the table and escape before the pitying looks from the barista grew any more pronounced. That's when the door opened. She came in like the storm itself had blown her inside, windswept, breathless, rainwater streaming from her dark hair. But it wasn't just her that stopped Daniel's hand halfway to his wallet. It was the small child balanced on her hip, a little girl no more than 2 years old, wrapped in a pink raincoat with bunny ears on the hood. Daniel watched as the woman's eyes scanned the cafe, widening slightly when they landed on him. He saw the exact moment she registered his presence, the way her shoulders tensed, the protective tightening of her grip on the child, the flash of something that looked painfully like resignation crossing her face. She didn't move toward him right away. Instead, she stood there in the doorway, rain puddling at her feet, having what Daniel could only describe as a silent argument with herself. He could practically see the calculations running through her mind, the probabilities of rejection, the likelihood of disappointment, the easier option of simply turning around and pretending this night had never happened. Daniel made his choice in that moment. He stood up. The movement drew her attention, and their eyes met properly for the first time. Hers were dark brown, almost black in the cafe's warm lighting, and they held a wariness that Daniel recognized immediately. It was the same guardedness he saw in his own mirror every morning, the look of someone who'd been hurt and learned to armor themselves against the world. He didn't wave or call out. Instead, he did something unexpected, something that came as naturally to him as breathing after 3 years of single fatherhood. He smiled, not at her, but at the little girl on her hip. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice carrying across the cafe. "I love your bunny raincoat." The child turned her face, which had been buried in the woman's shoulder, and peeked at him with enormous gray eyes. A tiny smile flickered across her face before she hid again, suddenly shy. The woman, Mara, it had to be Mara, seemed to exhale a breath she'd been holding. The tension in her shoulders didn't disappear entirely, but something shifted. She walked toward him, each step deliberate, as if crossing an invisible bridge that might collapse at any moment. "Daniel?" she asked when she reached the booth. Her voice was softer than he'd expected, with a slight rasp that suggested she'd been talking herself in and out of this decision all evening. "That's me," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "And you must be Mara," Please, sit down. You both look like you could use something warm. I'm so sorry I'm late, she began, settling into the booth with practiced efficiency, positioning the child on her lap with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. My sitter canceled last minute, and I tried calling Emma to reschedule, but she didn't answer, and I thought... She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. I'm making excuses. The truth is, I almost didn't come at all. I probably should have just... I'm glad you came, Daniel interrupted gently. Both of you. Mara studied his face, searching for something. Sincerity, maybe. Or the first signs of the polite rejection she was clearly expecting. Most guys would have already left by now, she said finally. I was thinking about it, Daniel admitted with a half smile. But then I remembered my daughter threw a tantrum about missing story time for this, and I figured I should at least see it through. Otherwise, she wins on a technicality. Something flickered in Mara's expression, surprise or perhaps relief. You have a daughter? Sophie, she's 4, currently at my sister's house, probably convincing Emma to let her stay up way past bedtime. He paused, then added, Emma didn't mention that detail, did she? About me being a single parent. She might have buried it somewhere in the sales pitch, Mara said, and for the first time, Daniel saw the hint of a real smile. Between he's incredibly kind and he builds furniture with his bare hands like some kind of modern-day carpenter. Daniel laughed. She told you about the furniture? She showed me pictures. Apparently you made Sophie an entire miniature library complete with carved animals. It was therapeutic, Daniel said, feeling heat creep up his neck. He wasn't used to talking about himself, about the long nights in his garage when sleep wouldn't come, and his hands needed something to do besides shake. After my wife died, I needed something. Turns out I'm decent with wood. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel watched Mara process this information, saw the subtle shift in how she held herself. The child on her lap had grown heavy with drowsiness, her head resting against Mara's chest, thumb finding its way to her mouth. I didn't know, Mara said quietly. Emma didn't mention... I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly hard. It was 3 years ago, Daniel said, which wasn't really an answer but was the closest he could come to articulating the complicated truth of grief. Some days are better than others, but Sophie, she's my reason for the better days. He nodded toward the sleepy child. What about you? Emma was suspiciously vague about the details of your life. Mara's hand moved unconsciously to stroke the little girl's hair, a gesture so tender it made Daniel's chest ache. This is Lily, she said. She'll be 2 next month. It's complicated. Most things worth anything are, Daniel said. A silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the rain continued its steady percussion against the windows. A barista called out someone's complicated order, and a group of college students erupted in laughter at a nearby table. But in their booth, there was a strange sense of stillness, as if they existed in a bubble slightly removed from the rest of the world. Can I get you something? Daniel asked finally. Coffee? Tea? They make a really good hot chocolate, and I'm betting Lily might like it. Mara glanced down at the drowsy child. She's usually in bed by now. I should probably just... 1 drink, Daniel said. Please. I promise if you hate me after 15 minutes, you can make a dramatic exit and I'll never tell Emma it didn't work out. I'll say you were delightful and I was the problem. That earned him another almost smile. Why would you do that? Because my sister means well, but her disappointment is exhausting. And also because you came all the way here in the rain with a toddler who should be in bed, which means some part of you wanted to see this through. I'd like to honor that. Mara studied him again with those dark, assessing eyes. Hot chocolate sounds good, she said finally. For both of us. Daniel flagged down a server, ordered 2 hot chocolates and a refill on his coffee, and added a grilled cheese sandwich to the order without asking. A parent's instinct that Mara would need real food, not just something sweet. When the server left, Mara raised an eyebrow. Grilled cheese? Just a hunch, Daniel said. You have that look. What look? The one that says you probably skipped lunch and dinner because you were busy taking care of everyone else and forgot to take care of yourself. Mara's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her features before she shuddered it away. That's presumptuous. Is it wrong? She was quiet for a moment. No, she admitted. It's not wrong. Their drinks arrived, steam rising in lazy spirals. Lily stirred at the scent of chocolate, her eyes opening halfway. Mara held the cup carefully, helping the little girl take small sips while Daniel watched the practiced choreography of it, the way Mara automatically tested the temperature first with her own lips, how she kept a napkin ready to catch drips, the soft, encouraging murmurs she made when Lily got frustrated with the process. "You're good at that," Daniel said. "I've had practice." Mara's voice was quiet. "More than I ever expected to have, honestly." "How's that?" Mara hesitated, her fingers wrapping around her own mug as if drawing warmth from it. Lily had settled back against her chest, chocolate-stained lips working around her thumb as sleep tried to reclaim her. The cafe sounds seemed distant, muffled, as if the world had narrowed to just this table, this moment. "I'm not her mother," Mara said finally, the words coming out quick and low like she needed to get them out before courage failed her. "Biologically, I mean. She's my niece, my sister's daughter." Daniel waited, sensing there was more, that this was the truth she'd been bracing to tell since she walked through the door. "My sister died," Mara continued, her voice steady but strained. 18 months ago, car accident. She was a single mom, no father in the picture. He left before Lily was even born. I was her emergency contact, her will executor, Lily's legal guardian, in case— She swallowed hard. "In case something happened. We never thought something actually would." Sarah was only 29. "I'm so sorry," Daniel said, the words inadequate but necessary. Mara nodded, accepting the sympathy without dismissing it. "I was working as a financial analyst in San Francisco when I got the call. I had this whole life planned out. Corner office, senior partner by 35, maybe a nice condo with a view. In less than a day, all of that became irrelevant. I packed up my apartment, moved to Seattle to be close to Sarah's friends, and the only home Lily had ever known, and became a mother to a 6-month-old baby who'd lost the only parent she'd ever had." Daniel felt the weight of her words settle into the space between them. He recognized the shape of that grief, the way tragedy could rewrite your entire existence in a single moment. "That's incredibly brave," he said. "It's not brave," Mara said, shaking her head. "It's just what you do. She's my blood. She's all I have left of Sarah. There was never really a choice." "There's always a choice," Daniel countered gently. "You chose love over convenience. You chose her future over your career. That's courage, whether you call it that or not." Mara's eyes glistened, but she blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall. "Most people don't see it that way. When I tell them, and I always tell them eventually, I won't lie about it, they see complications. They see someone else's kid, someone else's responsibility. They see a ready-made family they didn't sign up for." "And that's why you almost didn't come tonight," Daniel said, understanding clicking into place. "You thought I'd be like them." "Can you blame me? I've been on 4 dates since moving here. 4. Every single one ended the same way. Polite excuses, promises to call that never materialize, the slow fade until I get the message." Her laugh was bitter. "I'm not even looking for anything serious. I barely have time to sleep, let alone date. But Emma kept insisting, and my neighbor kept saying I needed adult conversation that didn't revolve around Sesame Street. And I just thought, maybe this time." "This time what?" "Maybe this time someone would see past the complications," Mara said softly. "Maybe this time I wouldn't have to be just the woman with the tragedy. Maybe I could be, I don't know, myself." The grilled cheese arrived, and Daniel pushed the plate toward Mara without comment. She looked at it, then at him, and something in her expression cracked open just slightly. "Eat," Daniel said, "and then tell me about yourself. Not about what happened to you, about who you are." Mara picked up half of the sandwich, took a bite, and Daniel could see the exact moment she realized how hungry she'd actually been. She ate quietly for a minute, Lily dozing against her chest, before speaking again. "I don't know if I remember who that is anymore," she admitted. "Before Sarah died, I was obsessed with financial markets, economic theory, the elegant mathematics of money. I used to read the Wall Street Journal before I even got out of bed. Now I read Goodnight Moon 4 times a night and consider it a victory if I remember to drink water. She paused. I sound pathetic. You sound like a parent, Daniel said. Trust me, I get it. Before Sophie, I was a mechanical engineer who worked 60-hour weeks and thought sleep was for the weak. Jessica was the nurturing one, the one who knew all the baby stuff. When she died during childbirth complications, I had a 3-day-old daughter and absolutely no idea what I was doing. Sophie cried for 6 hours straight that first night home from the hospital, and I cried right along with her. Mara's expression softened. What did you do? Eventually, I called my mom at 3 a.m, sobbing so hard she thought something terrible had happened. She talked me through it, how to check if Sophie was hungry, wet, tired, overstimulated. Turned out she just needed to be held differently, more upright because of reflux. Such a simple thing, but I didn't know. I felt like a failure before I'd even really started. And now? Now I can tell the difference between hungry crying and tired crying from 2 rooms away. I can change a diaper in under 60 seconds. I know every word to Frozen and can make scrambled eggs shaped like dinosaurs. Daniel smiled. It doesn't make up for her not having a mother, but I'm trying to be enough. I'm sure you're more than enough, Mara said, and there was a conviction in her voice that made Daniel's throat tight. Lily stirred, making a small sound of protest, and Mara shifted her position automatically, rocking slightly in that universal parent motion that soothes fussy children. Daniel watched the unconscious grace of it, the way her entire body seemed attuned to the child's needs. How old did you say Sophie was? Mara asked. 4. She starts pre-K in the fall, which is both exciting and terrifying. She's incredibly smart. Too smart sometimes. Last week she asked me why we couldn't just bring mommy back if doctors can fix broken bones, and I spent 2 hours trying to explain death to a 4-year-old who thinks The Lion King is just a story. What did you tell her? That sometimes people's bodies stop working in ways that doctors can't fix, but that the love they gave us stays forever. That mommy lives in our hearts and in our memories, and that's a different kind of alive. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I have no idea if that was the right thing to say. Parenting is just constant improvisation and hoping you're not screwing them up too badly. That sounds exactly right to me, Mara said. Last month, Lily found a photo of Sarah and said, Mama. I spent the next hour crying in the bathroom while she played with blocks, completely unaware that she'd just broken my heart and put it back together at the same time. They fell into silence again, but it was different now, deeper, more comfortable. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, and the cafe had started to empty as the evening grew late. Lily was fully asleep now, her small body completely relaxed against Mara's chest, her bunny-eared hood askew, and her cheeks flushed with warmth. She's beautiful, Daniel said softly. She's everything, Mara replied. Some days I look at her and I can't believe I ever had a life before her. Other days I'm so exhausted I can barely remember my own name, but I wouldn't change it. Even on the hardest days, I wouldn't change it. I know exactly what you mean. Daniel finished his coffee, now cold, but he drank it anyway out of habit. Sophie is the reason I get up in the morning. Literally, she jumps on my bed at 6 a.m. every day, no matter what time I finally fell asleep. But she's also the reason I laugh, the reason I keep going, the reason I haven't just stopped. Mara nodded slowly. Emma was right about you. Yeah? She said you were kind, that you'd understand. Mara's smile was small but genuine. I thought she was just trying to sell me on this, but she was right. For the record, she oversold the furniture thing. I'm mediocre at best. I doubt that. Mara glanced down at Lily. I should probably get her home and into an actual bed. Thank you for not running when you saw me walk in with a baby, for ordering me food, for just being decent. The bar's really that low? Daniel asked, only half joking. You'd be surprised. Mara started gathering her things, a diaper bag that had seen better days, Lily's sippy cup, the small stuffed bunny that matched her raincoat. Can I ask you something, though, before I go? Anything. Why did you smile at her first? Mara asked. When I walked in, you smiled at Lily before you even looked at me. Why? Daniel considered the question. Because I know what it's like to walk into a room where everyone sees your kid as an inconvenience instead of a person. I've had people literally turn away from me at the grocery store when Sophie was having a meltdown, like we were contagious. I've been asked to leave restaurants because a 4-year-old couldn't sit perfectly still for 2 hours. He paused. I figured Lily didn't ask to be here on your date, and she deserves to feel welcome, even if this whole thing turned out to be a disaster. It wasn't a disaster, Mara said quietly. No? No. She stood carefully, settling Lily more securely against her shoulder. The little girl didn't even stir, lost in the deep sleep of toddlers. I'd like to do this again, if you want to. Daniel stood as well, reaching for his jacket. I'd like that. Maybe next time without the audience? I mean, I love Lily, but I feel like we barely scratched the surface of actual getting-to-know-you conversation. I have to find a reliable sitter first, Mara said. The woman who was supposed to watch her tonight has canceled on me 3 times now. I'm starting to think she doesn't actually like children. What about during the day? Daniel suggested. I work from home mostly, freelance engineering consulting, so I have some flexibility. Maybe we could do lunch this weekend. We could meet at a park, bring the kids, let them run around while we talk. Mara's eyes widened slightly. You want to bring Sophie? Why not? They're going to meet eventually if this goes anywhere. Might as well see if they get along. Daniel grabbed some napkins and handed them to Mara for Lily's chocolate-stained face. Plus, Sophie could use more friends. She's a bit of a loner at preschool. Lily, too, Mara admitted. She's wary of other kids. I think she picks up on my anxiety about everything. Then it's settled. This Saturday, Green Lake Park, noon. We'll bring lunch, the kids can play, and we'll see what happens. Mara nodded, a smile breaking across her face that transformed her completely. In that moment, she wasn't the tired, guarded woman who'd walked in bracing for rejection. She was someone lighter, younger, full of a tentative hope that Daniel recognized because he felt it too. Saturday, she confirmed. I'll be there. They walked to the door together, and Daniel held it open as Mara navigated Lily and all her gear out into the night. The rain had stopped entirely now, leaving the streets washed clean and glistening under the streetlights. Mara? Daniel called before she could walk away. She turned back, Lily's head bobbing slightly on her shoulder. I'm glad Emma set this up, he said, and I'm really glad you came, even 17 minutes late with a sleepy toddler. Mara's smile grew. Me too, Daniel. Me too. He watched her walk to her car, an older model sedan with a car seat in back, and carefully buckle Lily in. She waved once before driving away, and Daniel found himself waving back, standing alone on the sidewalk with a strange warmth spreading through his chest. It had been 3 years since he'd felt anything remotely like anticipation when it came to another person. 3 years of going through the motions, of focusing solely on Sophie, of convincing himself that the lonely ache in his chest was just the price of surviving grief. But standing there in the cool Seattle night, watching Mara's taillights disappear around a corner, Daniel felt something shift. Maybe Emma had been right. Maybe it was time to believe that life could hold more than just memories and survival. Maybe there was room for something new, something unexpected, something that started with a rainy Tuesday night and a woman who understood what it meant to build a family from the ashes of loss. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted his sister. She was 17 minutes late. It was perfect. Thanks, Em. The response came almost immediately. I knew it! Details tomorrow. How's Sophie? Probably still awake despite your promises. Heading home now. She's fine. Reading her 4th book. Come get her in the morning. You deserve a quiet night. Daniel smiled and pocketed his phone. The drive home took him through familiar streets, past the house he'd shared with Jessica, past the garage where he'd built Sophie's furniture during those sleepless early months of grief. But tonight, the streets felt different somehow, less haunted, more full of possibility. When he finally pulled into his driveway, the house wasn't as dark and empty as it usually felt without Sophie's chaos filling every room. Tonight, it felt peaceful, quiet in a way that wasn't lonely, just still. He made himself tea, something Jessica had taught him, that ritual of warmth before bed, and sat in the kitchen, replaying the evening in his mind. Mara's tentative smile, the way she held Lily with such fierce protectiveness, the honesty in her voice when she told him about her sister, about the life she'd left behind. Daniel understood what it meant to have your life completely rewritten by forces beyond your control. He understood the exhaustion of single parenthood, the constant low-grade anxiety that you weren't doing enough, being enough. He understood the loneliness of lying awake at night, wondering if anyone would ever see past the complicated reality of your life to the person you still were underneath all the responsibility. And he understood what Mara probably didn't fully realize yet, that her capacity to love a child who wasn't biologically hers, to sacrifice everything for Lily's well-being, spoke to a depth of character that was rare and precious. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, it's Mara. Emma gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Lily woke up asking about the nice man who liked her coat. Thought you'd want to know you made an impression." Daniel found himself grinning at his phone like a teenager. "That's really okay. Tell Lily I hope she has sweet dreams in her bunny coat, and tell her I can't wait for her to meet Sophie on Saturday. She's already asleep again. But I'll tell her in the morning. See you Saturday, Daniel." "See you Saturday, Mara. Drive safe." He set his phone down and looked around his kitchen, at the crayon drawing Sophie had taped to the refrigerator, at the photographs of Jessica that he'd finally been able to put up without crying, at the life he'd built piece by careful piece from the wreckage of loss. Maybe, he thought, there was room in that life for something more. Not a replacement for what he'd lost. Nothing could ever replace Jessica or the family they'd planned together. But something new, something different. Something built not on the fantasy of perfection, but on the reality of two imperfect people who understood what it meant to love fiercely and keep going even when everything fell apart. Outside, the last of the rain clouds were clearing, and stars were beginning to appear in the Seattle sky. Daniel finished his tea, turned off the lights, and headed to bed with a lightness in his step that he hadn't felt in years. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that made Seattle feel like a postcard. Daniel had been awake since 5:30, unable to sleep past the moment light started filtering through his curtains. He'd already showered, made breakfast, and reorganized Sophie's toy bin twice before his daughter finally padded into the kitchen at 7:15, dragging her stuffed elephant behind her. "Daddy, why are you wearing the blue shirt?" Sophie asked, climbing into her chair with the determined focus of someone scaling Mount Everest. Daniel looked down at himself. He'd changed 3 times already, finally settling on a navy Henley that Jessica had always said brought out his eyes. "What's wrong with the blue shirt?" "Nothing. You only wear it for special days." Sophie's eyes, the same hazel as her mother's, studied him with unnerving perception. "Is today special?" "We're going to the park to meet some new friends," Daniel said, setting a plate of pancakes in front of her. He'd cut them into star shapes, something he only did when he was nervous and needed his hands busy. "What kind of friends?" "A lady named Mara and her little girl, Lily. Remember I told you about meeting them?" Sophie considered this while methodically eating around the edges of her pancake, saving the center for last like she always did. "Is Mara going to be my new mommy?" The question hit Daniel squarely in the chest. He sat down across from his daughter, trying to keep his expression calm. "No, sweetheart. Nobody is going to replace your mommy. But Mara is someone Daddy would like to get to know better. And Lily is almost 2 years old. I thought maybe you could show her how to play on the swings." "I'm good at swings," Sophie said with the absolute confidence of a 4-year-old. "I can go really high. Lily might be scared." "Then you can teach her not to be scared. That's what big kids do. They help little kids feel brave." Sophie nodded seriously, as if Daniel had just entrusted her with a vital mission. "Okay. But Daddy?" "Yeah, Princess? Can we bring the good snacks, the fruit pouches, not the baby crackers?" Daniel smiled. "Deal." By 11:30, they were packed and ready. Blanket, snacks, Sophie's favorite ball, sunscreen, hand sanitizer, and the small first aid kit Daniel had learned to never leave home without. Sophie was wearing her favorite purple dress with the twirly skirt and had insisted on bringing 3 different stuffed animals so Lily could choose which one she liked best. The drive to Green Lake Park took 20 minutes through Saturday traffic. Sophie kept up a running commentary about everything she saw: a dog in a truck, a bird on a wire, a bus painted with an advertisement for a musical she'd never heard of but now desperately wanted to see. "Do you think Lily likes purple?" Sophie asked as they pulled into the parking lot. "I don't know, Bug. You'll have to ask her. But she's little. Can she talk? A little bit, probably. You'll figure it out. They found a spot near the playground, and Daniel felt his pulse quicken as he scanned the area for Mara. It was 12:05. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe this had been a terrible idea. Maybe... Daniel! He turned to see Mara walking toward them from the other direction, Lily toddling beside her while holding her hand. In the daylight, without the rain and the dim cafe lighting, Mara looked younger than he'd initially thought. Maybe early 30s, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and wearing jeans and a green sweater that made her eyes seem lighter. Lily was in overalls and tiny pink sneakers, her fine blonde hair catching the sunlight. "You made it," Daniel said, aware of how obvious the statement was, but unable to think of anything more clever. "You sound surprised," Mara said, but she was smiling. "Did you think I'd bail?" The thought crossed my mind. Same here, if I'm honest. I rewrote my text to you 17 times this morning. Only 17? I'm at 23. They laughed, and the tension Daniel had been carrying in his shoulders eased slightly. Sophie had been hiding behind his leg, suddenly shy, but now she peeked out at Lily with open curiosity. "Hi," Sophie said to Lily. "I'm 4. How old are you?" Lily held up 2 fingers, or tried to. She actually held up 3, which made Mara gently correct her hand position. 2, Lily said clearly. 2. "Do you like purple?" Sophie asked, with the intensity of someone asking a genuinely important philosophical question. Lily looked at her mother, uncertain, and Mara crouched down to her level. "Can you say purple, honey? Purply." "Puh-puh," Lily attempted. "Close enough," Sophie declared. "Want to see my animals?" "I brought 3. You can pick your favorite and I'll share." Without waiting for an answer, Sophie took Lily's hand with surprising gentleness and led her to the blanket Daniel was spreading out on the grass. The 2 girls sat down, and Sophie began a serious presentation of each stuffed animal's unique qualities and personality traits. Daniel and Mara stood watching, both seeming afraid to move and break whatever fragile magic was happening. "She's good with her," Mara said softly. "Sophie's been asking for a sibling since she could talk," Daniel said. "I think she's just excited to have someone to boss around who isn't me." "Lily doesn't interact with other kids much. She usually just watches from a distance." Mara's voice held a note of concern. "This is actually really good to see." They settled onto the blanket, close enough to supervise but far enough to give the girls space. Sophie had given Lily the elephant, apparently the highest honor, and was now explaining the rules of some elaborate game that seemed to involve the animals going on an adventure to find magic cookies. "So," Mara said, pulling out containers of cut fruit and what looked like homemade muffins, "I should probably confess something." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Okay." "I Googled you." He laughed, relief flooding through him. "That's your confession. I Googled you 3 days ago." "You did not." Mara Louise Collins, formerly of Fisk and Brennan Financial in San Francisco, graduated top of your class from Berkeley, published 2 papers on sustainable investment strategies, quoted in Forbes when you were 26. Daniel grinned at her stunned expression. "What? You thought I wouldn't do my research?" "I didn't find anything about you," Mara admitted. "Just some articles about mechanical innovations from 8 years ago, and a mention in your wife's obituary." Her voice softened on the last part. Jessica Wright, beloved teacher and mother, survived by her husband Daniel and daughter Sophie. "I'm sorry I read it. It felt invasive." "It's public record," Daniel said. "And honestly, I'd have been more surprised if you hadn't looked. We're both parents. Due diligence is part of the job description." "Still, I'm sorry for your loss. 3 years isn't that long. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like a lifetime ago." Daniel watched Sophie demonstrate a somersault for Lily, who clapped with delight. "Jessica would have liked this, I think. She always said I needed to get out more, meet people. She'd probably be thrilled I'm actually on a second date." "Is that what this is?" Mara asked. "A second date? What would you call it? Strategic parental networking with romantic potential?" Daniel laughed so hard he snorted, which made Sophie look over with concern before returning to her game. "That might be the most practical description of dating I've ever heard. I'm a financial analyst. Practicality is kind of my thing. Mara handed him a muffin. These are banana chocolate chip. I made them at 11 p.m. last night because I couldn't sleep and stress baking is apparently my new hobby. Daniel took a bite. They were perfect, moist, not too sweet, still warm from the container. These are incredible. Do you always stress bake before dates? I've only been on 5 dates total in the last 18 months, and yes, I baked before every single one. Mara pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. It's the only thing that helps when my brain won't stop spinning through worst-case scenarios. What were your worst-case scenarios for today? You want the full list? Sure. That you'd take one look at Lily in daylight and remember you have standards. That Sophie would hate Lily and they'd cry the entire time. That I'd say something awkward and you'd politely excuse yourself after 20 minutes. That I'd realize you were secretly a serial killer. That, wait, serial killer? Daniel interrupted. That's on your list? It's Seattle. We have a history. Fair point. Daniel stretched his legs out, leaning back on his hands. Want to hear my worst-case scenarios? Please. That you'd decide I was boring. That you were only being polite at the cafe and didn't actually want to see me again. That I'd spend the whole time saying the wrong thing and you'd leave thinking I was an idiot. That Sophie would have a meltdown and you'd realize I'm actually terrible at this single parent thing despite all the bravado. You're not boring, Mara said immediately. You're not awkward. Sophie's not having a meltdown. Lily's not crying. They smiled at each other, and Daniel felt that same warmth from Tuesday night spreading through his chest again. Daddy? Sophie called. Can we go to the swings now? Lily wants to try. Sure, Bug. Let's go. The playground was moderately crowded with weekend families. Daniel lifted Lily into a baby swing while Mara helped Sophie onto the regular one beside it. The girls squealed with delight as they swung, Sophie going high and fearless, while Lily giggled at even the smallest movements. Higher, Daddy, Sophie called. Be careful, Mara said automatically, her hand hovering near Lily's swing. Daniel gave Sophie a solid push, sending her soaring. She's got this. She's been swinging since she was 3. But what if she falls? Then she'll cry. I'll comfort her, and she'll probably want to swing again in 5 minutes. Kids are resilient. Daniel smiled gently. I know it's hard to trust that, especially when you've already lost someone you loved. Mara's hand dropped. Is it that obvious? That I'm terrified something will happen to her? Only because I spent Sophie's entire first year convinced she'd stop breathing if I looked away for even a second. I slept on the floor next to her crib for 8 months because I couldn't trust the baby monitor. Daniel gave Lily another gentle push. Eventually, my sister sat me down and told me I was going to drive myself insane if I didn't accept that I couldn't control everything. That some risk is part of life, and trying to eliminate all of it would just make Sophie afraid of the world. How did you stop being scared? I didn't. I just got better at managing it, and some days I still fail spectacularly at that too. They stood together in companionable silence, pushing the swings in rhythm, while around them other parents did the same. It was such an ordinary moment, a Saturday afternoon at the park, children playing, autumn sunshine filtering through the trees. But to Daniel, it felt significant somehow, like a small piece of normalcy he hadn't realized he'd been missing. After 20 minutes, both girls were ready for something new. Sophie led the charge to the slide, with Lily following more cautiously. Daniel and Mara positioned themselves at strategic points to catch anyone who might fall, but the girls navigated the playground equipment with the fearless determination of children everywhere. She's never been this comfortable around another kid, Mara said, watching Lily attempt to climb the ladder behind Sophie. At the Mommy and Me classes I tried taking her to, she just clung to me the entire time. Maybe she just needed to meet the right kid, Daniel suggested. Sophie can be bossy, but she's got a good heart. She won't let Lily get hurt. I can see that. Mara's expression was soft as she watched Sophie wait patiently at the top of the slide for Lily to reach her. Your wife did a good job with her. Before she died, you mean? You can say it. Daniel kept his eyes on Sophie. Jessica was only with Sophie for 3 days. Everything Sophie is, she became in spite of losing her mother at birth, not because of her. Then you did an incredible job. I did a terrified job and hoped for the best. He watched Sophie slide down, then wait at the bottom to catch Lily when she came down. But thank you. It means something, hearing that from another parent who gets how hard this is. They spent another hour at the playground before relocating back to the blanket for lunch. Daniel had brought sandwiches that Sophie immediately declared were too healthy, while Mara had packed what appeared to be an entire deli's worth of options. The girls sat close together, sharing food with the easy generosity of children who'd decided they were friends. "So tell me something," Mara said, biting into a turkey sandwich. "What made you say yes to this blind date in the first place? Emma told me she'd been trying to set you up for over a year." Daniel considered the question. "Honestly, Sophie asked me why I was always sad." Mara's expression shifted. "Oh, we were reading before bed one night, and she just stopped mid-page and asked me, 'Daddy, why are you always sad even when you're smiling?' And I realized she was right. I'd been going through the motions, working, taking care of her, keeping the house running, but I wasn't actually living. I was just existing." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want her to grow up thinking that was normal, that life was just something you survived instead of something you lived." "That's a heavy realization." "Yeah. So when Emma called the next day about meeting you, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. Figured even if it was terrible, at least I'd be trying. For Sophie, if not for myself." "And was it terrible?" Mara asked with a slight smile. "You were 17 minutes late and brought a toddler who got chocolate all over my favorite cafe's table. It was completely imperfect." Daniel met her eyes. "And it was the best date I've had in 4 years." Mara looked away, but not before he saw her smile widen. "You're very good at saying the right thing. You know that?" "I'm really not. Ask Sophie. I told her the tooth fairy was running late because of traffic last month." "That's adorable." "She asked what kind of car the tooth fairy drives." "What did you say?" "A Prius, because it's fuel efficient and fairies care about the environment." Mara laughed, and Daniel decided it was possibly his new favorite sound. Lily had fallen asleep against Mara's side, exhausted from the morning's adventures. Sophie was lying on her stomach, carefully arranging leaves in some pattern that made sense only to her. The park had gotten quieter as lunchtime passed, families packing up and heading home for naps or other weekend activities. "Can I ask you something personal?" Mara said quietly, so as not to wake Lily. "After I told you about the Tooth Fairy's Prius, I think we're past the point of formal boundaries. What was Jessica like?" Daniel had gotten this question before from well-meaning friends and family, and it always felt like a trap. Too much detail and people thought he was stuck in the past. Too little and they thought he was cold or had moved on too quickly. But somehow, sitting here with Mara, the question felt different. Not intrusive, but genuine. "She was sunlight," he said finally, not in some poetic, idealized way. I mean, she was literally like sunlight, warm, bright, impossible to ignore. She taught second grade and talked about her students like they were the most fascinating people on earth. She sang in the shower, terrible off-key renditions of 80s pop songs. She cried during insurance commercials and laughed so hard at her own jokes that she couldn't finish telling them. She sounds wonderful. She was. She was also stubborn as hell, chronically late to everything, and had a tendency to start projects she never finished. Our garage still has half-painted furniture and a jewelry-making kit she swore she'd master. Daniel smiled at the memories. She wasn't perfect, but she was perfect for me, you know? "I do know," Mara said softly. "Sarah was like that too. Chaotic and brilliant and impossible to keep up with. She could make friends with anyone, literally anyone. She once became best friends with a woman at the DMV while waiting 3 hours for her license renewal. That's just who she was." "Do you talk to Lily about her?" "Every day. I show her pictures, tell her stories, make sure she knows her mother loved her more than anything in the world." Mara's voice caught slightly. "I don't know how much she'll actually remember. She was only 6 months old when Sarah died. Sometimes I think the Sarah she'll know will be the version I create for her, not the real person. And that terrifies me. What if I get it wrong? What if I forget important things? What if I accidentally erase who her mother really was?" Daniel understood that fear intimately. "I used to panic about that too. I started writing things down, little stories, memories, things Jessica said or did. I have notebooks full of them for when Sophie is older. but my therapist told me something that helped. You see a therapist? Every other week for the past 2 years. Best decision I ever made. Daniel kept his tone light. She told me that memory is always constructed, even when the person is alive. Nobody can capture someone completely. We just hold on to the pieces that mattered most to us and trust that those pieces tell the truth of who they were. That's actually really helpful, Mara said. Thank you. Sophie had abandoned her leaf project and was now attempting to teach herself to do a handstand against a tree with predictably chaotic results. Daniel watched her with the practiced eye of a parent calculating injury probability and deemed it low enough to let her continue. What about you? Daniel asked. Before Sarah died. Before Lily. Who were you? What did Mara Collins care about when she wasn't being a parent? Mara tilted her head back, looking up at the sky through the tree branches. God, I almost can't remember. I was obsessed with work, constantly chasing the next promotion, the next big deal. I did SoulCycle 3 times a week and pretended to enjoy it. I dated casually but never seriously because I was convinced I had time, that I'd focus on personal life after I made partner. She laughed without humor. Turns out time is the one thing you can't actually count on. Do you miss it? That life? Sometimes. I miss sleeping past 6 a.m. I miss having conversations that don't involve negotiations about vegetables. I miss being someone other than Lily's aunt or that woman whose sister died. Mara looked down at the sleeping child against her side. But then Lily does something like laugh at absolutely nothing, just pure joy for no reason, and I realized that old life would feel empty now. Like I was living in black and white and didn't know color existed. That's beautiful, Daniel said. It's also exhausting and terrifying, and some days I have no idea what I'm doing. Welcome to parenthood. That's pretty much the permanent state of being. They talked for another hour while the girls rested, conversation flowing easily between comfortable silences. Mara told him about her work. She'd switched to freelance consulting to have flexibility with Lily, taking on projects from home while the toddler napped or played. Daniel shared stories about his engineering work, about the satisfaction of solving complex mechanical problems, and the frustration of clients who thought they knew better than the expert they'd hired. When Lily woke up, they moved to the lake shore where the girls threw rocks into the water and shrieked with delight at the splashes. Sophie showed Lily how to find the flattest stones, explaining in her serious 4-year-old way that these were the best for skipping even though neither of them could actually skip stones yet. You're a natural at this, Mara said, watching Daniel crouch down to help Lily throw a particularly large rock. At what? Just being present, being patient. Some people are good with kids in theory, but terrible in practice. You're genuinely good at it. I had to learn fast, trial by fire and all that. Daniel brushed dirt off Lily's hands before she could put them in her mouth. Plus, kids are honest in a way adults aren't. They tell you immediately if you're screwing up. That's definitely true. Lily told my neighbor she smelled like old cheese last week. Daniel tried not to laugh and failed. Did she? Absolutely, but you're not supposed to say it. Mara was grinning, though. I was mortified. My neighbor thought it was hilarious. The afternoon stretched on, easy and unhurried. Around 4 o'clock, both girls started showing signs of fading energy, Lily rubbing her eyes, Sophie getting whiny about nothing in particular. It was time to pack up. This was really nice, Mara said as they gathered their things. Better than nice. I can't remember the last time I felt this relaxed. Same here, Daniel admitted. He hesitated, then added, Would you want to do it again? Maybe next weekend? I'd like that. Though maybe we could do something just us next time. No offense to our delightful children, but I'd like to have a conversation where we finish complete sentences. Daniel's heart jumped. Are you asking me on a third date, Mara Collins? I think I am. Unless you're going to make me formally submit a request in writing. That would be very on brand for a financial analyst. Shut up, Mara said, but she was laughing. They walked back to the parking lot together, Sophie holding Daniel's hand while Lily insisted on walking herself until she got tired and reached for Mara. At their cars, they paused, neither quite ready to leave. Text me, Mara said, about next weekend? I will, Daniel promised. Sophie insisted on hugging Lily goodbye, wrapping her arms around the smaller girl with exaggerated care. "Bye, Lily. You're my friend now." "Fran," Lily agreed happily. Daniel and Mara exchanged glances over their daughters' heads, sharing a smile that felt private despite being in a public parking lot. On the drive home, Sophie chattered nonstop about the park, about Lily, about all the things they'd do next time they played together. Daniel listened with half his attention, while the other half replayed the afternoon. Mara's laugh, the way she'd relaxed as the hours passed, the moment their hands had brushed reaching for the same juice box, and they'd both frozen for just a second before laughing it off. "Daddy?" Sophie said, breaking into his thoughts. "Yeah, Bug? I like Mara and Lily. I'm glad. Are we going to see them again?" "I think so. Would you like that?" Sophie considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Yes. Lily needs a big sister to teach her things, and Mara makes you smile different." "Different how?" "Like you mean it," Sophie said simply. Daniel looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, this small, wise person who saw more than he gave her credit for. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" "I know," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" That evening, after Sophie was bathed and in bed, Daniel sat in his living room with a glass of wine and his phone. He'd started and deleted 3 different texts to Mara before finally settling on something simple. "Thanks for today. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about Lily. Pretty sure she's already planning their matching Halloween costumes for next year." The response came quickly. "Lily cried when I put her in the car because she wanted to stay with So-So. I think that's her attempt at Sophie. This was really good, Daniel. I'm glad we did this." "Me too. Dinner next Saturday, just us? I'd love that. I'll see if my neighbor can watch Lily. And I'll bribe Emma with wine to take Sophie. It's a date then. 3rd time's the charm. Let's hope so." Daniel set his phone down and leaned back into the couch, feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope, mixed with anticipation, mixed with the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, life was offering him a second chance at happiness. It wouldn't look like what he'd had with Jessica. It would be different, built on different foundations, shaped by different experiences. But sitting there in the quiet of his living room, thinking about Mara's smile and the way their daughters had bonded so naturally, Daniel thought different might be exactly what he needed. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new, something unexpected. Something that started with a rainy cafe and star-shaped pancakes and continued into whatever came next. His phone buzzed one more time. "Hey Daniel, thanks for not running away. Either time." He smiled and typed back. "Thanks for showing up, both times." Outside, night had fully fallen over Seattle, but inside Daniel's house, something felt lighter than it had in years. He finished his wine, checked on Sophie one last time. She was sprawled across her bed, elephant clutch tight, already dreaming, and went to bed feeling like maybe, finally, he was ready to do more than just survive. He was ready to start living again. The restaurant Mara had chosen for their 3rd date was a small Italian place in Fremont, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and a menu written on a chalkboard that changed daily. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early, nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first date with Jessica a decade ago. He'd changed his shirt twice, asked Sophie if he looked okay. She'd said he looked fancy sad, which he chose to interpret as formal, and had nearly turned around 3 times on the drive over. Now he sat at a corner table, fidgeting with his water glass and trying not to check his phone every 30 seconds. The restaurant was filling up with the early dinner crowd, couples and small groups settling into the warm ambiance of soft lighting and the smell of garlic and fresh bread. Mara walked in at exactly 6:30, and Daniel felt his breath catch. She was wearing a deep red dress that he'd never seen before, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back, and she looked nervous and beautiful, and nothing like the tired woman who'd stumbled into the cafe 3 weeks ago with a sleeping toddler. "Hi," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Sorry, I'm not late, am I? I left extra time, but then there was traffic on the bridge, and I thought—" "You're perfect," Daniel interrupted, then felt heat creep up his neck. "I mean, you're right on time. You're not late. You look really nice." Thanks, you too. Mara tucked her hair behind her ear. A gesture he was learning meant she was nervous. This is weird, right? Being here without the kids? I keep feeling like I should be cutting someone's food into smaller pieces. Or wiping something off someone's face, Daniel agreed. I almost brought Sophie's diaper bag by accident. I got all the way to the car before I realized she hasn't worn diapers in 2 years. That broke the tension. Mara laughed, and Daniel felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. They ordered wine, a Chianti that the server promised was exceptional, and fell into easier conversation as the bottle slowly emptied. They talked about everything and nothing. Mara told him about a consulting project gone wrong when a client ignored her recommendations and then blamed her when their investments tanked. Daniel shared a story about Sophie's recent obsession with dinosaurs and her insistence that she was going to be a paleontologist princess when she grew up. They debated the best coffee shops in Seattle, argued about whether the Seahawks had any chance this season, and discovered they'd both been to the same tiny bookstore in Pike Place Market and loved it for the exact same reason: the owner's cat who sat on the counter and judged customers. It was easy, natural. Daniel couldn't remember the last time conversation had flowed this effortlessly with another adult, but underneath the easy rhythm of their dialogue, he could sense something else, a weight that Mara was carrying, something she kept starting to say and then stopping herself. "What is it?" he asked finally, during a lull while they waited for their entrees. "What's what?" "You keep doing this thing where you start to say something and then change the subject. You've done it 4 times now." Mara took a sip of her wine, then set the glass down with deliberate care. "I'm that obvious?" "Only because I've been watching you pretty closely." Daniel kept his tone gentle. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share. But I also want you to know that you can. Tell me things, I mean, even hard things." Mara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "There's something I haven't told you. About Lily, about everything." Daniel's stomach tightened, but he kept his expression open. "Okay. When I told you that Lily wasn't my biological daughter, that was true. She's Sarah's baby, and I adopted her after Sarah died, but there's more to it than that." Mara took a breath. "Sarah didn't just die in a car accident. She was murdered." The word hung in the air between them, like something physical. Daniel felt the restaurant noise fade into background static as he tried to process what Mara had just said. Her boyfriend at the time, Lily's father, though he never wanted anything to do with her, he had been abusive. Sarah had finally gotten the courage to leave him, got a restraining order, the whole thing. She thought she was safe. Mara's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. He followed her home from work one night, ran her car off the road. She died instantly. They caught him 3 days later trying to flee to Canada. "Mara," Daniel breathed, "I'm so sorry." "He's in prison now. Will be for the next 25 years minimum. But that's why I'm so protective of Lily, why I sometimes seem paranoid about safety. Because I learned that terrible things can happen even when you do everything right. Sarah did everything right. She left. She got the restraining order. She told people what was happening. And she still died." Daniel reached across the table and took her hand without thinking. She didn't pull away, just gripped his fingers like they were a lifeline. "After it happened, I had to make a choice," Mara continued. "Lily's father's parents tried to fight me for custody. They'd never cared about her before, never even met her, but suddenly they wanted their granddaughter. I had to go to court, had to prove I was the better option, had to relive Sarah's death over and over again in testimony." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "It took 8 months. 8 months of legal battles and home studies and psychological evaluations while I was trying to grieve my sister and care for a traumatized baby who cried every time I left the room." "But you won," Daniel said softly. "I won. His parents gave up the fight eventually. I think they just wanted to hurt me, to take away the one thing I had left of Sarah. Once they realized it was going to cost them money and time, they disappeared." Mara finally met his eyes. "So when I say Lily is mine, I don't just mean biologically or legally. I mean I fought for her. I chose her every single day, even when it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And I need you to understand that before this goes any further." "Before what goes any further?" "This. Us. Whatever this is becoming. Mara pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself defensively. I need you to know what you're walking into. I'm not just a single mom with a cute kid. I'm a woman raising her dead sister's daughter while trying to outrun the trauma of how she died. I wake up from nightmares where I see Sarah's car going off the road. I can't drive in the rain without having panic attacks. I check the locks on my doors 5 times before bed because I'm terrified someone will come for Lily. Their food arrived, but neither of them moved to eat. The server, reading the tension at the table, set the plates down quickly and retreated. Daniel leaned forward, forcing Mara to look at him. Do you want to know why I really said yes to Emma's blind date setup? You said it was because Sophie noticed you were sad. That was part of it. But the whole truth is that Sophie asked me if I was going to be sad forever. And I realized I didn't know how to answer her, because the truth is, I probably will carry sadness with me for the rest of my life. Jessica is gone, and that loss isn't something that just heals and goes away. It changes you. It becomes part of who you are. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When Sophie was 6 months old, I had a breakdown, just completely fell apart. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. I checked Sophie's breathing every 10 minutes because I was convinced she'd stop. I called the pediatrician so many times they started recognizing my number. My sister finally made me go to therapy because she said I was spiraling. Mara listened, her expression softening. My therapist asked me what I was most afraid of, and I told her I was afraid I'd fail Sophie, that I wasn't enough, that I couldn't be both parents, that one day she'd realize how broken I was, and it would damage her forever. Daniel's voice was rough. And you know what she told me? She said the fear meant I cared, that only people who genuinely love their kids worry that much about screwing them up. The bad parents are the ones who never question themselves. Where are you going with this? Mara asked quietly. I'm saying that I understand trauma. I understand fear. I understand feeling like you're one bad day away from falling apart completely. And I'm also saying that none of that scares me away from you. He reached for her hand again. You're not damaged goods, Mara. You're a survivor who chose love over grief. That's not a warning sign. That's exactly the kind of person I want in my life. A tear slipped down Mara's cheek, and she wiped it away impatiently. You say that now, but what happens when you realize how complicated this really is? What happens when I have a panic attack in the middle of dinner because someone's perfume reminds me of Sarah's funeral? What happens when Lily has a nightmare about her mother and I spend 3 hours calming her down instead of answering your texts? Then I'll understand, Daniel said simply. Because I've been there. Maybe not the exact same circumstances, but I know what it's like to be drowning in responsibility and grief and fear all at once. I know what it's like to feel like you can't afford to fall apart because someone depends on you. I know what it's like to smile through the day and then cry in the shower at night because that's the only place you're allowed to break. Mara stared at him, something shifting in her expression. You really mean that? I really do. Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm not going to pretend this is simple. I'm not going to promise I'll always know the right thing to say or do. But I am promising that I'm not going anywhere just because things are hard. Hard is my default setting at this point. They sat in silence for a moment, hands linked across the table while their food grew cold. Around them, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm. Couples laughing, servers delivering food, the clink of silverware on plates. But in their corner, time seemed suspended. I've never told anyone the whole story before, Mara said finally. Just the sanitized version. My sister died, I adopted her daughter. People don't ask questions when you say it like that. They offer sympathy and move on. Why did you tell me? Because I'm falling for you, Mara said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. And I needed to know if you'd run when you knew the truth, if this was just fun distraction for you, or if it was something real. Daniel felt his heart hammer against his ribs. And if I told you I was falling for you too, that I have been since you walked into that cafe looking terrified and brave at the same time, I'd say you're crazy. We barely know each other. Maybe. Or maybe sometimes you just know when something feels right, even if the timing is weird and the circumstances are complicated. Daniel smiled slightly. Jessica used to say she knew she'd marry me on our second date. I thought she was insane, but she was right. I'm not Jessica, Mara said, But there was no accusation in it, just fact. I know, and I'm not the same person I was when I was with her. We're both different people carrying different histories. That's okay. That's actually what makes this work. We understand each other's damage. Mara laughed, watery but genuine. That's the most depressing basis for a relationship I've ever heard. But accurate? Unfortunately, yes. She finally picked up her fork, taking a bite of pasta that had to be lukewarm by now. God, I'm sorry. I just dropped the world's heaviest conversation on you during what was supposed to be a nice dinner. You gave me honesty. That's worth more than nice. Daniel started eating his own food, making a face at the temperature but eating it anyway. For the record, though, I have my own baggage you should probably know about. More than the dead wife and 4-year-old daughter? Jessica's parents blame me for her death. Mara's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What? Not officially, I guess. But they think if I'd been there during the delivery, if I'd noticed something was wrong sooner, if I'd insisted on a different hospital or a different doctor, they think she might have lived. Daniel kept his voice even, years of therapy allowing him to state the facts without falling apart. They don't see Sophie, haven't since she was 3 months old. They sent a card on her first birthday with no return address, and nothing since. That's awful. It is what it is. I tried to maintain contact, sent pictures and updates, but they never responded. Eventually, my therapist told me I had to accept that their grief made me the enemy, and there was nothing I could do to change that. He met Mara's eyes. So if we're trading terrible truths, there's mine. Sophie doesn't have grandparents on her mother's side because they can't separate me from their loss. Does Sophie know? Not yet. I'll tell her when she's older. For now, she has my parents and Emma, and that's enough. Daniel took a sip of wine. But you should know that going forward, if this becomes something serious, you're not just getting me and Sophie. You're getting all the complicated family dynamics, too. Same, Mara said. Sarah's parents are lovely but devastated. They try to be part of Lily's life, but seeing her is painful for them. She looks exactly like Sarah did as a baby. I send pictures every month and we video chat, but they've only visited twice in 18 months. It's too hard for them. They finished their meal trading smaller truths, the kind of details that paint a fuller picture of a person's life. Mara talked about her struggles with work-life balance, about the clients who didn't respect her new boundaries around availability, about the financial stress of single parenting on a reduced income. Daniel shared his own challenges, the loneliness of working from home, his complicated relationship with dating as a widower, the guilt he still carried about sometimes resenting the responsibility of being Sophie's only parent. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu they agreed to share, the weight of earlier revelations had lifted slightly. Not disappeared, but settled into something more manageable. Can I ask you something? Daniel said, watching Mara take a bite of dessert and close her eyes in appreciation. After everything we just talked about, I think we're past permission, Mara said. What do you want? Like, big picture. If you could have anything, what would your life look like? Mara considered the question seriously. Honestly, I want stability. I want Lily to grow up feeling safe and loved. I want to be able to pay my bills without having panic attacks about money. I want to wake up one morning and realize I went a whole day without crying about Sarah. She paused. And I want someone to share it with. Not to fix me or save me, but just to be there. To understand that some days I'll have nothing to give, and that's okay. To help me remember that I'm more than just a caretaker. That doesn't sound like too much to ask for, Daniel said. Doesn't it? Because I've pretty much accepted that I might be doing this alone. That I might be the weird single parent who everyone feels sorry for, but nobody actually wants to date seriously. Stop, Daniel said firmly. You're not a charity case. You're an incredible person who survived something devastating and chose to build a life anyway. That's not something to be pitied. That's something to be admired. Mara's eyes shimmered again. You keep saying things like that. Because they're true. What about you? Mara asked. What do you want? Daniel thought about it. I want Sophie to be happy. To grow up knowing she was loved by both her parents, even if she only got to meet one of them. I want to stop feeling guilty every time I enjoy something, like I'm betraying Jessica's memory by moving forward. He smiled slightly. And I want what you want, someone to share the hard stuff with. Someone who gets that grief doesn't have an expiration date, but that doesn't mean you can't also have joy. We're both kind of a mess, aren't we? Mara said. The best people usually are. They finished dessert and lingered over coffee, neither ready for the evening to end. The restaurant had emptied out, only a few tables still occupied, and their server had stopped hovering, giving them space. I should probably get back, Mara said reluctantly. My neighbor can only watch Lily until 10. I need to relieve Emma too. I promised Sophie I'd be home before bedtime. Daniel signaled for the check, and they split it despite his half-hearted protest. Outside, the November air was crisp and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. They walked slowly to where they'd parked near each other, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Thank you, Mara said, stopping between their cars. For listening, for not running, for being you. Thank you for trusting me with the truth, Daniel said. I know that wasn't easy. They stood in the parking lot, close enough that Daniel could see the gold flecks in Mara's brown eyes, could smell her perfume, something subtle and floral. His heart was hammering, and he was fairly certain he was about to make either the best or worst decision of the night. Can I kiss you? He asked, the words coming out quieter than he'd intended. Mara's breath caught. I thought you'd never ask. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, but she met him halfway, her lips soft against his, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. The kiss was gentle, tentative, carrying all the weight of two people who'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted, to be chosen, to be seen. When they pulled apart, Mara was smiling. That was, yeah, Daniel agreed. We should probably. Definitely. But neither of them moved. They stood there like teenagers grinning at each other in a parking lot, until finally Mara laughed and stepped back. Okay, I really do have to go now, but text me when you get home? I will, Daniel promised. He waited until she'd driven away before getting in his own car, his mind replaying every moment of the evening. The revelations, the honesty, the kiss. It should have felt overwhelming, should have sent him spiraling into doubt and second-guessing. Instead, he felt lighter than he had in years. The drive home gave him time to think, about Mara's truth, about what it meant, about whether he was really ready for this. Because she'd been right. This wasn't simple. This was complicated and messy and came with trauma neither of them had asked for. But sitting in traffic on the I-5, Daniel realized he didn't want simple. Simple was boring. Simple was surface-level connections that never went deeper than pleasant conversation and polite interest. What he wanted was real. And Mara, with all her baggage and damage and fierce protective love for a child who'd lost everything, was as real as it got. Emma was waiting when he got home, curled up on his couch with a book, while Sophie presumably slept upstairs. You're smiling, Emma observed, setting her book aside. That's either really good or you've finally snapped. It's good, Daniel said, collapsing into his armchair. It's really good, and also terrifying. Tell me everything. So he did. Not the intimate details, those felt sacred somehow, meant only for him and Mara, but the broad strokes. About Mara's honesty, about the weight of what she'd shared, about the kiss in the parking lot that felt like a promise of something more. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concerned to hopeful as he talked. You're falling for her, she said when he finished. It wasn't a question. I think I already fell, Daniel admitted. I'm just waiting to see if she's falling too, or if I'm about to crash spectacularly. From what you just told me, she's already there, Emma said gently. Daniel, she told you the worst parts of her story. That's not something you do unless you're invested, or unless you're testing to see if I'll run. Did you? No? Then you passed her test. Emma stood, gathering her things. For what it's worth, I think she's good for you. I haven't seen you this animated about anything besides Sophie in 3 years. It's only been 3 weeks, Daniel protested weakly. Jessica knew she'd marry you on the second date, Emma reminded him. Sometimes you just know. After Emma left, Daniel checked on Sophie, still sound asleep, elephant clutched tight, before collapsing into bed. His phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Home safe. Lily asked where I'd been, told her I went to dinner with a friend. She asked if the friend was Soso's daddy, This child is too perceptive. Daniel smiled and typed back. Sophie asked if you were my girlfriend. I said I hoped so, but we'd have to ask you to be sure. That's a very fourth-grade approach to dating. Would it work? There was a pause, the three dots appearing and disappearing several times before Mara's response came through. Yes. If you're asking, the answer is yes. Daniel's chest felt too full, like his heart was expanding beyond the space his ribs could contain. Then I'm asking, officially. Will you be my girlfriend, Mara Collins? Yes, officially. I will be your girlfriend, Daniel Wright. Good. Now go to sleep. We both have early mornings with small humans who don't believe in sleeping past 6 a.m. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Mara. He set his phone aside and stared at the ceiling, too wired to sleep despite the late hour. In 3 weeks, his entire life had shifted. He'd gone from going through the motions of existence to feeling genuinely excited about the future. From believing he'd spend the rest of his life alone to having someone who understood his damage and chose him anyway. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was the best thing that had happened to him since Sophie was born. Daniel fell asleep that night with a smile on his face and hope in his heart, ready for whatever complicated, messy, beautiful thing came next. The following weeks unfolded with a rhythm that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Daniel and Mara fell into a pattern of stolen moments between parenting responsibilities, coffee dates during preschool hours, phone calls after the girls went to bed, text messages throughout the day that ranged from mundane updates to confessions neither had expected to share so soon. They introduced the girls to each other more frequently, and Sophie and Lily's friendship deepened with the easy intensity of young children who'd decided they belonged to each other. It was working. Against all odds and despite all their baggage, it was actually working. Until it wasn't. The shift happened on a gray December afternoon when Daniel stopped by Mara's apartment unannounced. They'd planned to meet later that evening, but he'd finished a project early and thought he'd surprise her. Maybe bring coffee, maybe steal a kiss before the chaos of dinner and bedtime routines took over. He knocked on her door carrying 2 lattes and wearing a smile that died the moment Mara opened the door. She looked wrecked. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy with tears, and she was holding Lily, who was also crying, hiccuping sobs against her mother's shoulder. What happened? Daniel asked immediately, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Are you hurt? Is Lily okay? We're fine, Mara said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Physically, we're fine. Then what? His parents are suing for custody. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had already detonated. Daniel felt his stomach drop as the implications crashed over him. Lily's father's parents? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Mara nodded, moving mechanically to set Lily down in her playpen with some toys. The toddler immediately started crying harder, reaching for her mother with desperate hands. Mara hesitated, then picked her back up, unable to deny the child comfort, even as her own composure crumbled. I got served papers this morning, Mara continued, her voice hollow. They're claiming I'm an unfit guardian, that I don't have the financial stability to provide for her properly, that she deserves to know her father's family, that a single woman working from home can't give her the structure and support she needs. That's insane, Daniel said immediately. You're an amazing mother. Anyone can see that. Can they? Mara's laugh was bitter. Because their lawyer seems to think they have a case. They're claiming I isolated Lily from her paternal grandparents, that I've poisoned her against her father's memory, that I'm emotionally unstable. She was pacing now, Lily's head resting against her shoulder. They have a nice house in the suburbs, a 2-parent household, financial security. On paper, they can probably provide more than I can. Daniel felt anger surge through him. This is about revenge. They're trying to punish you because their son is in prison. Of course it is, but that doesn't mean they won't win. Mara finally looked at him, and the fear in her eyes was visceral. Daniel, I could lose her. I could actually lose her. Everything I've built, everything I've sacrificed, all of it could be taken away because some bitter people want to hurt me. That's not going to happen, Daniel said with more confidence than he felt. You have documentation, right? The custody agreement from before? Evidence that they abandoned their claim? They're saying they didn't understand what they were agreeing to, that they were grieving, and I took advantage of their vulnerability. Mara's voice broke. They're twisting everything, making it sound like I manipulated them when the truth is they didn't want anything to do with Lily until they realized they could use her to hurt me. Lily had quieted to soft whimpers, her tiny fists clutching Mara's shirt. Daniel watched mother and daughter, seeing the terror in Mara's face mirrored in the child's confused distress. Lily might not understand the specifics, but she knew something was wrong. Children always knew. "What did your lawyer say?" Daniel asked. "I don't have a lawyer yet. I can barely afford rent and daycare. I definitely can't afford a custody attorney." Mara finally sank onto the couch, still holding Lily. "I called 3 different firms this afternoon. The retainer alone is more than I make in 2 months, and this could drag on for months, maybe years. Legal fees could bankrupt me, and even then I might lose." Daniel sat beside her, careful not to crowd her space but needing to be close. "There has to be something we can do. Legal aid, pro bono services?" "I have calls in to everywhere I could think of, but it's December. Everyone's overwhelmed and understaffed, and I'm just another desperate case in a system full of desperate cases." She looked at him with eyes that had lost their hope. "I'm going to lose her, Daniel. I can feel it. This is exactly what happened to Sarah. She did everything right and still lost everything. History is repeating itself, and I can't stop it." "Don't say that," Daniel said firmly. "This is not the same situation. You're not alone in this." "Aren't I?" Mara's voice was sharp. "What are you going to do, Daniel? You can't fix this. Nobody can fix this. This is my nightmare coming true, and all I can do is watch it happen." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to promise he'd make it all better, but the truth was she was right. He couldn't fix this. He couldn't make the lawsuit disappear or guarantee the outcome. All he could offer was his presence, his support, and the inadequate comfort of not facing it alone. "Let me help," he said quietly. "However I can. Let me help. Let me—" "How?" "By throwing money at lawyers I can't afford? By testifying about what a great mother I am based on 8 weeks of dating?" Mara shook her head. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Getting close to someone, letting them in, and then having everything fall apart anyway. I should have known better." The words stung, but Daniel forced himself not to react defensively. She was terrified and lashing out, he understood that. But there was also truth in her fear. They'd moved fast, maybe too fast, and now reality was crashing in with devastating force. "What are you saying?" he asked carefully. "I'm saying this is too much. All of it. I can't handle a relationship and a custody battle, and keeping my business afloat and actually parenting Lily through whatever trauma this is going to cause her." Mara's voice was getting quieter, which somehow felt worse than if she'd been yelling. "I need to focus. I need to put all my energy into keeping my daughter. Everything else has to wait." "Everything else meaning me," Daniel said, not a question. "I'm sorry," Mara whispered. "You've been wonderful. You've been more than I ever expected or deserved. But I can't do this right now. I just can't." Daniel felt something crack in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand you're scared. I understand you need to prioritize Lily. But pushing me away isn't going to make this easier." "Maybe not. But it's one less thing I have to worry about managing." Mara stood, still holding Lily, creating physical distance between them. "I need you to go. Please. I need to think, and I can't do that with you here looking at me like your heart is breaking because mine broke first." Daniel stood slowly, every instinct screaming at him to fight this, to refuse to leave, to somehow make her see that she didn't have to face this alone. But he also knew that pushing now would only make things worse. She needed space, needed time to process the terror of potentially losing her child. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll go. But Mara, I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, I'll still be here." She didn't respond, just held Lily tighter and turned away. Daniel let himself out, closing the door behind him with a gentle click that felt far too final. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of half an hour, his entire world had shifted again. The future he'd started to imagine, with Mara and Lily as part of his and Sophie's life, had been yanked away, replaced by the familiar ache of loss. The drive home was automatic, muscle memory guiding him while his mind replayed the conversation. Mara's fear, her tears, The way she'd shut down and shut him out with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to protect herself by building walls. Emma was at his house with Sophie when he walked in. One look at his face, and she ushered Sophie upstairs with promises of a special movie, then returned to find Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. "What happened?" she asked, sliding into the chair across from him. He told her everything. The lawsuit, Mara's panic, the breakup that wasn't quite a breakup, but felt like one anyway. "She's terrified," Emma said when he finished. "Of course she pushed you away. That's what people do when they're drowning. They push away the people trying to help because they're afraid of pulling them under too." "I know that. Intellectually, I know that." Daniel ran his hands through his hair. "But it still hurts. And I don't know what to do. Do I respect her space? Do I fight for this? Do I just wait and hope she comes back? What do you want to do?" "I want to fix it. I want to make the lawsuit disappear and prove to her that she doesn't have to face this alone." Daniel laughed without humor. "But I can't do that. I can't fix this any more than I could fix Jessica dying." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "No, you can't fix it. But you can show up. You can be there even when she's pushing you away. You can prove that you're not going anywhere." "She told me to leave." "She told you she was scared," Emma corrected. "There's a difference. Daniel, you've been through hell and back. You know what it's like to feel like you're drowning. What did you need during those dark months after Jessica died?" Daniel thought back to that time, to the fog of grief and fear and overwhelming responsibility. "I needed people who didn't try to fix me, who just stayed. Even when I was awful to them, even when I pushed them away." "Exactly." Emma squeezed his hand. "So don't try to fix this. Just stay. Be present. Let her know you're not going anywhere even when she's convinced you will." The next morning, Daniel texted Mara. Not a long message, nothing demanding or guilt-inducing, just simple and true. "Thinking of you and Lily. I'm here if you need anything." She didn't respond. He texted again the next day. "Hope you're both okay." Still nothing. On the third day, he stopped by her apartment with groceries, practical things he knew she'd need, milk and bread and fresh fruit, the kind of basics that fall through the cracks when you're in crisis mode. He left them outside her door with a note. "You don't have to respond. You don't have to see me, but you do have to eat. Both of you." That evening, his phone buzzed. "Thank you." It was just 2 words, but it felt like a lifeline. Over the following week, Daniel established a routine. He'd drop off groceries every few days, always with a simple note. Never asking for anything, never demanding her time or attention, just consistent, quiet support. Sophie noticed, of course. She asked where Lily was, why they couldn't play anymore, whether Mara was mad at them. "Mara and Lily are going through a hard time," Daniel explained carefully. "Sometimes when things are really difficult, people need space to figure things out, but that doesn't mean we stop caring about them." "Can we help?" Sophie asked, with the earnest concern of a child who wanted to fix everything. "We are helping, by being patient and kind and letting them know we're thinking about them." Sophie considered this, then disappeared to her room. She emerged 20 minutes later with a drawing, crayon flowers, and 2 stick figures she labeled as Lily and Mara, surrounded by hearts. "Can we give this to them?" she asked. Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I think they'd really love that." He included Sophie's drawing with the next grocery delivery. That night, Mara called. "Hi," she said, her voice rough like she'd been crying. "Hi," Daniel replied, his heart hammering. "Sophie's drawing is on our refrigerator. Lily keeps pointing to it and saying, 'So-so.'" There was a pause. "I'm sorry I've been shutting you out." "You don't have to apologize." "Yes, I do. You've been nothing but supportive, and I repaid that by pushing you away when things got hard." Mara took a shaky breath. "I'm terrified, Daniel. Every time I close my eyes, I see them taking her away from me. I wake up in panic attacks, convinced she's already gone. I can't eat, can't sleep, can't think about anything except this lawsuit." "Have you found a lawyer yet?" "I have a consultation tomorrow with a family law attorney who does sliding scale work. I don't know if I can afford her, but it's something." Her voice cracked. "I'm trying to be strong for Lily, but I'm barely holding it together." You don't have to hold it together, Daniel said gently. Not with me. You're allowed to fall apart. If I fall apart, who takes care of Lily? Me, Emma, your neighbor. You have people, Mara. You're not alone in this, even if you feel like you are. There was silence on the other end, broken only by the sound of Mara crying. Daniel waited, letting her process, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. Can I see you? She asked finally. Not a date, just, can you come over? I need to not be alone right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He called Emma, who agreed to come stay with Sophie despite the late hour. Then he drove to Mara's apartment, his heart in his throat, not sure what he'd find, but knowing he needed to be there. Mara opened the door looking exhausted. She'd lost weight in the past week, her face drawn and her eyes shadowed, but she managed a small smile when she saw him. Hi, she said. Hi, he replied. She stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was messier than he'd ever seen it, toys scattered everywhere, dishes in the sink, laundry piled on the couch, evidence of someone barely surviving rather than living. Lily's asleep, Mara said, closing the door behind him. She finally went down about an hour ago. She's been having nightmares, wakes up screaming for me multiple times a night. She can sense your stress, Daniel said carefully. I know, which makes me feel even worse because I can't hide it from her no matter how hard I try. Mara collapsed onto the couch, pushing aside the laundry. I'm failing her. I'm supposed to protect her, and instead I'm falling apart. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. You're not failing her. You're human. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like the same thing. Do you want to know what I see? Daniel asked. I see a woman who's fighting like hell to keep her daughter, who's working and parenting and trying to navigate a legal system designed to break people like us, who's doing it all alone and somehow managing to keep her kid fed and safe and loved despite everything. He turned to look at her. That's not failing. That's superhuman. Mara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being present together. Daniel could feel the tension slowly draining from Mara's body, her breathing evening out as exhaustion finally caught up with her. I shouldn't have pushed you away, she said eventually. I was scared, and I reverted to old patterns, shutting people out before they can leave me first. I understand that impulse, Daniel said. After Jessica died, I did the same thing. Pushed away everyone except Emma because she physically wouldn't let me. Convinced myself I was protecting them from my grief when really I was just protecting myself from more loss. How did you stop? Therapy, time, and eventually realizing that isolating myself wasn't actually protecting anyone. It was just making everything harder. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You don't have to go through this alone, Mara. I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. What if they take her? Mara's voice was small. What if I lose her and you're stuck with someone who's completely broken? Then we'll figure it out together, but you're not going to lose her. We won't let that happen. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen you with Lily. I've seen the way you love her, the way you put her needs above everything else. No judge looking at the facts, the real facts, not the distorted version her grandparents are presenting, could possibly think she'd be better off anywhere else. Mara pulled back to look at him. You really believe that? I really do. Daniel took her hands. And I want to help, however I can. If you need money for a lawyer, let me help with that. If you need someone to watch Lily so you can meet with attorneys or prepare your case, I'll do it. If you just need someone to sit with you while you fall apart, I'll do that too. I can't ask you to... You're not asking, I'm offering. He squeezed her hands. Mara, I care about you. I care about Lily. Whatever happens with us romantically, that doesn't change. You're important to me. Let me be here for you. She studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. I'll let you help. Thank you. They talked late into the night about practical things, legal strategy, documentation Mara needed to gather, character witnesses who could testify on her behalf. Daniel took notes on his phone, creating an action plan that felt more manageable than the overwhelming panic Mara had been drowning in. "The lawyer I'm seeing tomorrow specialized in custody cases," Mara said. She seemed confident on the phone, said she's dealt with situations like this before. "That's good. What did you tell her about the case?" "Everything. The history with Lily's father, his parents' initial abandonment of custody, the current lawsuit." Mara rubbed her eyes. She said it's definitely defendable, but it's going to be ugly. They're going to dig into every aspect of my life trying to find ammunition. "Then we make sure there's nothing to find," Daniel said practically. "Your apartment is clean, Lily is healthy and happy, your finances are in order, you're doing everything right." "What about you?" Mara asked quietly. "What about me?" "They're going to use you against me. The fact that I'm dating someone new, that I'm bringing men around Lily, they'll twist it into something inappropriate." Daniel hadn't considered that, but of course she was right. In a custody battle, every detail became a weapon. "Then we'll address it head on," he said. "I'm a widowed father with full custody of my own daughter. I work from home, have stable income, a clean record. If they try to paint me as some kind of threat, your lawyer can shut that down immediately with facts." "You'd be willing to testify? To put yourself and Sophie under scrutiny?" "If it helps you keep Lily, absolutely." Daniel meant it. Whatever discomfort or inconvenience it caused him was nothing compared to what Mara was facing. Mara's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve someone who shows up, who doesn't run when things get hard, who understands what you're going through." He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You deserve so much more than you think you do." She kissed him then, desperate and grateful, and tinged with the fear that this might all fall apart despite their best efforts. Daniel kissed her back, trying to pour every ounce of reassurance and commitment into the gesture. When they finally pulled apart, Mara managed a real smile for the first time in a week. "Stay?" she asked. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight." "I need to get back to Sophie," Daniel said reluctantly. "But I can come back tomorrow. We can go through documentation together, start building your case." "Tomorrow," Mara agreed. "And Daniel, thank you for everything, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to." "That's what people do when they care about each other," Daniel said simply. "They stay." He drove home through empty streets, his mind already planning. He'd research custody law, reach out to his own lawyer for recommendations, maybe even call some of his clients who worked in legal fields. Whatever resources he had access to, he'd use them. Because Mara was right. This was going to be ugly and hard and possibly devastating. But they didn't have to face it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. Emma was still awake when he got home, reading on the couch despite the late hour. "How is she?" Emma asked. "Terrified. Overwhelmed. But fighting." Daniel collapsed into his chair. "I told her I'd help with everything." "Good. That's the right thing to do." "Is it? I barely know her, Em. We've been dating 2 months, and I'm about to get involved in a custody battle that could drag on for years." "Do you love her?" Emma asked bluntly. Daniel opened his mouth to deflect, then stopped. Did he love her? He thought about Mara's laugh, the way she held Lily with such fierce protectiveness, her honesty even when it hurt. He thought about how right it felt to be with her, how natural Sophie and Lily's friendship was, how for the first time in 3 years he'd started to imagine a future that included more than just survival. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I think I do." "Then it doesn't matter how long you've known her. Love is love, and you show up for the people you love." Emma smiled. "Besides, you're not exactly known for making cautious decisions. You fell in love with Jessica after 3 dates and married her 6 months later. That was different." "How?" Daniel thought about it. "It wasn't. I just knew. Same way I know now." "Exactly. So stop second-guessing yourself and just be there for her. The rest will figure itself out." After Emma left, Daniel checked on Sophie, still sleeping peacefully, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His life had gotten incredibly complicated in a very short time. He was falling in love with a woman fighting for custody of her dead sister's child, He was potentially about to involve himself and his daughter in a legal battle that could get messy. Everything logical said he should step back, protect himself and Sophie from the potential fallout. But logic had nothing to do with love. And Daniel had learned the hard way that life was too short and too unpredictable to waste time being cautious about the things that mattered. So he'd show up. He'd help fight. He'd be there for Mara and Lily however they needed him to be. And he'd hope like hell that it was enough. The custody battle consumed the next 4 months like a wildfire consuming dry timber. Mara's lawyer, Patricia Chen, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd built her reputation defending parents in impossible situations. She took one look at the lawsuit and declared it vindictive nonsense, but warned that vindictive nonsense could still win in family court if they weren't meticulous in their preparation. Daniel kept his promise. He showed up for every strategy session, took notes during every phone call with attorneys, helped Mara organize mountains of documentation proving she was a fit parent, bank statements, medical records, references from Lily's pediatrician and Mara's neighbors, photographs showing a happy, healthy child in a loving home. They built a case brick by brick, and Daniel was there for every exhausting moment of it. He was also there for the harder moments. The night Mara broke down sobbing after a particularly brutal deposition where the opposing lawyer had implied she was using Lily to replace her dead sister. The morning she woke up, convinced she'd lose, and wanted to give up entirely. The afternoon Lily asked why the mean people wanted to take her away from Mama, breaking both their hearts. Through it all, Daniel stayed. He brought groceries and cooked dinners neither Mara nor Lily had the energy to prepare. He watched Lily when Mara had court appearances. He held Mara while she cried and reminded her she was stronger than she knew. And slowly, grudgingly, Mara let him all the way in, let herself lean on someone for the first time since Sarah had died. Sophie became Lily's constant companion during those months. The two girls didn't understand the legal complexities, but they understood that their families belonged together. They had sleepovers at Daniel's house where they'd build blanket forts and whisper secrets. They went to the park together every Sunday without fail, creating their own small pocket of normalcy in the chaos. "They're like sisters," Emma observed one afternoon, watching Sophie teach Lily how to pump her legs on the swings. "You realize that, right? This isn't just about you and Mara anymore. Those girls have already decided they're family." Daniel knew she was right. Somewhere along the way, the four of them had stopped being two separate, broken families and started becoming something new, something whole. It terrified him almost as much as it filled him with hope. The court date was set for late March, a cold gray morning that matched the knot in Daniel's stomach. He'd taken the day off from work, arranged for Emma to watch both girls, and met Mara outside the courthouse at 8 a.m. She looked pale and drawn despite Patricia's reassurances that they had a strong case. She'd worn a conservative navy suit that made her look older, more severe, nothing like the warm woman Daniel knew. Court armor, he understood, presenting the version of herself that would play well to a judge. "I'm terrified," she admitted, gripping his hand so tightly it hurt. "I know, but you've got this. We've got this." Daniel squeezed back, trying to transfer some of his certainty into her. "Patricia knows what she's doing, and the truth is on your side. The truth doesn't always win. Today, it will." They walked into the courthouse together, through security and metal detectors, up 3 floors to the family court division. The hallway was full of people waiting for their own cases, their own battles over children and custody and fractured families. Daniel saw the fear and desperation on every face and understood it intimately. Patricia was waiting outside the courtroom, reviewing her notes one final time. She looked up when they approached and offered a confident smile. "Ready?" she asked Mara. "No, but let's do this anyway." The courtroom was smaller than Daniel had expected, wood-paneled and formal but not grandiose. The judge's bench loomed at the front, empty for now. On one side sat Mara's table with Patricia. On the other, Lily's paternal grandparents, James and Carol Martinez, sat with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Daniel had never seen them before, these people who'd abandoned Lily and now wanted to take her away. James was tall and gray-haired, his face set in hard lines. Carol looked softer, sadder, but there was steel in her eyes when she glanced at Mara. They believed they were doing the right thing, Daniel realized. In their grief-stricken minds, they were rescuing their granddaughter from an inadequate guardian. The realization didn't make him hate them any less. The hearing began with opening statements. The Martinez's attorney painted a picture of concerned grandparents worried about their granddaughter's well-being. He talked about Mara's demanding work schedule, her limited income, the instability of her living situation. He mentioned Daniel, a romantic partner of only a few months who's already been integrated into the child's life, demonstrating poor judgment and a pattern of instability. Patricia's response was surgical. She systematically dismantled every claim backed by documentation and testimony. Yes, Mara worked from home, but that gave her more time with Lily, not less. Yes, her income was modest, but she'd never missed a payment on rent or bills, and Lily wanted for nothing. As for Daniel, Patricia presented him as a stable, responsible father who'd been properly vetted and integrated into Lily's life gradually and appropriately. The Martinez's attorney called his first witness, a child psychologist who'd never met Lily, but testified that children generally benefited from two-parent households and extended family connections. Patricia's cross-examination revealed the psychologist had been paid $5,000 for his testimony and had published papers arguing that grandparents' rights should supersede parental autonomy. Then Carol Martinez took the stand. She cried as she described losing her son to prison, losing her daughter-in-law to tragedy, being denied access to her only grandchild. She talked about how they'd tried to be part of Lily's life, but Mara had made it impossible. How they just wanted to give Lily the stable, loving home she deserved. It was compelling testimony, delivered with genuine emotion. Daniel watched the judge's face and couldn't read her expression. Patricia's cross-examination was gentle but devastating. Mrs. Martinez, you say you tried to be part of Lily's life. Can you tell the court when you last attempted to contact Ms. Collins about seeing Lily? It's been difficult. She made it clear we weren't welcome. That's not what I asked. When was your last attempt at contact? Carol hesitated. About 2 years ago, right after the custody was finalized. 2 years. And in those 2 years, did you send birthday cards? Christmas presents? Any acknowledgement of Lily's existence? We were grieving. I understand that. But Ms. Collins was also grieving her sister while caring for an infant. Yet she still managed to send you monthly updates and photos for the first year, didn't she? I suppose. You suppose, or you know for certain? Because we have copies of every email, every photo, every attempt Ms. Collins made to include you in Lily's life, despite your son's horrific actions. Patricia's voice remained calm but firm. And you never responded, not once. Is that correct? We couldn't. Seeing her was too painful. I understand, but now, suddenly, that pain has disappeared? What changed, Mrs. Martinez? Carol's composure cracked. She looks just like Sarah. Our son loved her. She's all we have left of him. Your son murdered Sarah. He's in prison for her death, and you want to raise his victim's daughter as a memorial to him? Patricia let that sink in before continuing. Mrs. Martinez, have you considered what it would do to Lily to be raised by the parents of the man who killed her mother? The courtroom went silent. Carol was crying openly now, and even her attorney looked uncomfortable. After Carol stepped down, Patricia called Mara to the stand. Mara's testimony was different. She didn't cry or appeal to emotion. Instead, she spoke clearly and factually about adopting Lily, about the sacrifices she'd made, about the life they'd built together. She acknowledged her fears and imperfections, but emphasized that Lily was thriving, happy, securely attached. Ms. Collins, the Martinez's attorney, has suggested that your relationship with Mr. Wright demonstrates poor judgment. Can you speak to that? Patricia asked. Mara looked directly at the judge. Daniel Wright is one of the best things that's happened to us. Not because we needed rescuing or because I can't handle single parenthood, but because Lily and I deserve to have supportive people in our lives. Daniel is a widowed father raising his own daughter. He understands grief and loss and the weight of solo parenting. His presence in our lives has been nothing but positive. And his daughter, Sophie, how do the girls get along? For the first time, Mara smiled. They're inseparable. Sophie treats Lily like a little sister. She's patient and kind and protective. Lily lights up whenever Sophie's around. Would you say Sophie and Mr. Wright have become family to you and Lily? Yes, absolutely yes. Patricia then called Daniel to the stand. He'd been dreading this, being scrutinized and questioned. But as he took his oath and sat down, he felt oddly calm. He had nothing to hide. His life was an open book, and everything in it pointed to being a good father and a supportive partner. The Martinez's attorney tried to paint him as an opportunist, a man taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. But when asked directly about his intentions, Daniel didn't hesitate. "I love Mara. I love Lily. My daughter loves them both. We've become a family, and I want that to continue. Not because Mara needs me, but because we're better together than apart." "You've known Ms. Collins for less than 6 months," the attorney said skeptically. "Isn't it premature to be declaring love and family? My late wife knew she'd marry me after our second date. We were engaged in 4 months, married 6 months after that, and we had 4 wonderful years together before she died." Daniel kept his voice steady. "When you've experienced loss the way Mara and I both have, you learn not to waste time. You learn that life is too short to be cautious about the things that matter. And Mara and Lily matter." After Daniel stepped down, Patricia called her final witnesses. Lily's pediatrician testified that the child was healthy, well cared for, and showed no signs of neglect or distress. Mara's neighbor testified about seeing Mara and Lily at the park every day, about Mara's dedication as a mother. Emma testified about watching the relationship develop, about seeing Sophie and Lily bond, about Daniel's character and stability. The evidence was overwhelming. By any objective measure, Lily was exactly where she belonged. But family court wasn't always objective. The judge called a recess to review the case materials. Daniel, Mara, and Patricia retreated to a small conference room to wait. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. Mara couldn't sit still, pacing the small space while Daniel watched helplessly. "What if it's not enough?" she whispered. "What if the judge decides that grandparents in a stable marriage are better than a single aunt, no matter what the evidence shows?" "Then we appeal," Patricia said firmly. "But Mara, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how to read a courtroom." That judge was not impressed by the Martinez's case. She saw right through it. "You don't know that." "I do. Trust me." An hour later, they were called back into the courtroom. The judge, a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed her notes before speaking. "I've listened carefully to all testimony and reviewed the extensive documentation provided by both parties. This court takes custody matters extremely seriously, as the well-being of the child must always be our primary concern." Daniel felt Mara tense beside him, her hand finding his under the table. The Martinez family has argued that they can provide a more stable 2-parent home with greater financial resources. Those are valid considerations. However, stability is not simply about material circumstances. It's about consistency, attachment, and the child's best interests. The judge looked directly at the Martinez family. "Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, I understand your grief. I understand your desire to connect with your grandchild. However, this court cannot ignore that you made no effort to maintain a relationship with Lily for 2 years. You cannot abandon a child and then claim parental rights when it becomes emotionally convenient." Carol Martinez started crying again, and her husband put an arm around her. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "Ms. Collins has demonstrated exemplary care of Lily. The child is healthy, happy, and securely attached to her guardian. Every professional who has evaluated this situation has confirmed that Lily is thriving in Ms. Collins' care. To remove a child from a loving, stable home based solely on the grandparent's desire for connection would be traumatic and harmful." Daniel felt Mara's grip on his hand tighten painfully, but he didn't let go. "However, I am not unsympathetic to the Martinez family's desire to know their granddaughter. Therefore, this court rules as follows. Custody remains solely with Miss Mara Collins. The Martinez's petition for custody or guardianship is denied." Mara made a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh, her free hand covering her mouth. "Additionally, I am ordering supervised visitation rights for the Martinez family. 1 visit per month, supervised by a neutral third party, at Ms. Collins' discretion, and with the understanding that these visits can be terminated if they are found to be harmful to the child's well-being. This gives Lily the opportunity to know her paternal grandparents without compromising her primary attachment and stability." The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. "This court is adjourned." For a moment, Mara didn't move. Then she turned to Daniel, and her face was transformed with relief and joy and overwhelming gratitude. She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder while Patricia smiled and began packing up her materials. "It's over," Mara kept saying. It's really over." "You won," Daniel said, holding her tight. "Lily's yours. No one can take her away." They left the courthouse into afternoon sunshine that felt symbolic, like the weather itself was celebrating. Patricia hugged Mara goodbye with instructions to call if the Martinez family caused any problems with the visitation arrangement, then headed off to her next case. Daniel and Mara stood on the courthouse steps, and for the first time in months, Mara looked like she could breathe. "I need to see her," Mara said. "I need to hold Lily and tell her it's over, that we're safe. Emma's at my place with both girls. Let's go home." Home. The word felt right in ways Daniel hadn't expected. The drive back felt different from the tense journey that morning. Mara couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop saying "we won," like she needed to hear it repeatedly to believe it. Daniel kept one hand on the wheel and one hand holding hers, anchoring her to this moment, to this victory. When they walked into Daniel's house, they found Emma in the living room while Sophie and Lily played with building blocks, creating some elaborate structure that defied the laws of physics and toddler attention spans. "Mama!" Lily shrieked, abandoning the blocks and running to Mara. "You're back!" Mara scooped her up, holding her so tightly that Lily squirmed in protest. "I'm back, baby, and I'm never leaving. Never, ever." Sophie looked at Daniel with her two perceptive eyes. "Did you win, Daddy?" "We won, Princess. Lily gets to stay with Mara forever." "Good," Sophie said with the finality of a judge herself. "She's my sister. She has to stay." Emma looked at Daniel with a question in her eyes, and he nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. She grinned and quietly excused herself, leaving the four of them alone. That night, after the girls were bathed and fed and put to bed in Sophie's room, Lily had refused to sleep anywhere else, insisting she needed to stay with So-So. Daniel and Mara collapsed onto his couch with glasses of wine, and the bone-deep exhaustion that comes after sustained crisis finally ends. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," Mara admitted, curled against his side. "Like this can't be real. Something else terrible must be coming." "Nothing terrible is coming. You're safe. Lily's safe. The legal battle is over." Daniel pressed a kiss to her temple. "You get to just be a mom now. No lawyers, no court dates, no fighting for what's already yours." Just being a mom sounds pretty good," Mara said softly. Then she pulled back to look at him, her expression serious. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." His stomach clenched reflexively. "Okay. When I pushed you away in December, I told myself it was about protecting Lily, about needing to focus, and that was part of it. But the truth is, I was also scared of how much I'd come to need you." She took his hand. "I've been alone for so long, convinced I had to be strong enough to handle everything by myself. Letting you in meant admitting I couldn't do it alone, and that terrified me." "You could have done it alone," Daniel said. "You're strong enough, but you didn't have to, and I'm glad you let me help. These past months, watching you show up every single day, watching you be there even when I was falling apart, watching Sophie and Lily become sisters, I realized something." Mara took a breath. "I realized I want this, not just for now, but for always. I want us to be a family, a real family, all four of us." Daniel's heart was racing. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Daniel Wright. I'm saying I want to build a life with you. I'm saying that when I picture Lily's future, you and Sophie are in every single scene." She smiled. "I'm also saying that it's probably too soon and too fast, and every rational bone in my body is screaming that we should slow down. But I'm tired of being rational. I'm ready to choose joy." "I love you too," Daniel said, the words rushing out. "I have for months. I was just waiting for the right time to say it, and there never seemed to be a right time with everything happening." "Is this the right time?" "This is perfect timing." He kissed her, and it felt different from all the other kisses they'd shared. This one tasted like promise, like commitment, like the beginning of something that would last. When they finally pulled apart, Mara was grinning. "So what do we do now? Do we move in together? Do we introduce the girls as sisters officially? Do we get married?" Daniel interrupted, the words surprising him, as much as they surprised her. Mara froze. What? Marry me. Daniel heard himself say it and realized he meant it completely. I know it's crazy. I know it's fast. I know all the logical reasons we should wait. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Lily. I know Sophie deserves a mother who chooses to love her. I know we're better together than apart. So marry me, Mara. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Marry me and let's make this official. Mara was crying, but she was also laughing. This is insane. Completely. We've only known each other 6 months. I know. People will think we're rushing. Let them think whatever they want. Daniel, she cupped his face in her hands. Yes, I'll marry you. Because you're right. This is crazy and fast and completely illogical. And I don't care. I love you. I choose you. I choose us. They sealed it with another kiss, and then another. And somewhere in the back of Daniel's mind, he was aware that he should probably produce an actual ring at some point, should plan some romantic proposal, should do this properly. But they'd never done anything properly. They'd stumbled into each other's lives in the messiest way possible and somehow made it work. Why would their engagement be any different? 3 months later, on a warm June afternoon, they stood in Daniel's backyard under a simple arch decorated with flowers that Sophie and Lily had helped choose. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends, maybe 30 people total. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. Just 2 people who'd survived the worst and found each other anyway, promising to build something new together. Emma officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. She kept it short and sweet, acknowledging what they'd all been through, but focusing on the joy of what they were creating. Marriage isn't about finding someone to complete you, Emma said, smiling at Daniel and Mara. It's about finding someone to share your completeness with. 2 whole people choosing each other, choosing to build a family, choosing love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Sophie and Lily stood beside them as flower girls wearing matching purple dresses and holding hands. They'd insisted on standing up with their parents, and no one had the heart to say no. When it came time for vows, Daniel spoke first. Mara, 6 months ago I was convinced I'd spend the rest of my life alone, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and that was just how my story went. Then you walked into that cafe carrying Lily, looking terrified and brave and beautiful, and my story changed. You taught me that life could hold more than just survival, that it was okay to want things again, to hope for things again. You gave Sophie a mother, Lily a father, and me a future I'd stopped believing in. I promised to show up for you every day in all the ways that matter. I promised to love Lily like she's mine because she is. I promise to build a life with you that honors what we've lost while celebrating what we've found. I choose you, Mara, today and every day after. Mara was crying by the time he finished, and when she spoke, her voice shook. Daniel, I came to that date expecting nothing and left with everything. You saw me, really saw me, at my most vulnerable and didn't run away. You stayed through custody battles and panic attacks and all my messy, complicated reality. You gave me permission to not be strong all the time, to lean on someone, to believe in happy endings again. You gave Lily a father who chooses to love her, and that's a gift I can never repay. I promise to show up for you too. To be your partner, your best friend, your family. I promise to love Sophie like she's mine because she is. I promise to build a life with you where our daughters grow up knowing that family isn't just about blood. It's about who stays. I choose you, Daniel, today and always. When Emma pronounced them married, the girls cheered louder than anyone else. They'd been coached on throwing flower petals, but instead threw them at each other, dissolving into giggles while the adults tried and failed to maintain any semblance of decorum. The reception was in the same backyard, long tables full of food, string lights as the sun set, music playing while people danced on the grass. At one point, Daniel looked around and saw his parents dancing with Mara's, saw Sophie teaching Lily how to twirl, saw Emma chatting with Patricia Chen, who'd become a friend through the legal battle, saw people from both their old lives mixing with their new life. What are you thinking? Mara asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. That this is perfect, Daniel said honestly. That we actually pulled this off. We did, didn't we? She rested her head against his back. We made a family out of loss and grief and impossible timing. We made it work. We did, and we'll keep making it work. He turned to face her. Ready to dance with your husband, Mrs. Wright? I kept my name, remember? Ready to dance with your husband, Ms. Collins? Always. They danced as the sun finished setting, as the string lights cast everything in golden glow, as their daughters played with cousins and friends without a care in the world. They danced knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, that blending their families would have difficult moments, that grief would still visit them on random Tuesdays or during Christmas, or when Sophie asked questions about Jessica that Daniel didn't know how to answer. But they also danced knowing they'd face all of it together, that they'd chosen each other fully, with eyes wide open to the complications and damage and beautiful mess of it all. Later, after the guests had gone home, and the girls were asleep in what was now officially their shared room, Daniel and Mara sat on the back porch swing, exhausted and happy. Thank you, Mara said quietly. For what? For not running away. That first night at the cafe, you could have made up an excuse and left the moment you saw me walk in with Lily, but you didn't. You smiled at her and stayed, and that changed everything. I stayed because I recognized something in you, Daniel said. Someone who'd been knocked down by life but got back up anyway. Someone who chose love over fear. Someone worth knowing. Look at us now, Mara said with wonder. Married, parents to 2 incredible girls, actually happy. Actually happy, Daniel agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the swing creaking gently, the Seattle night cool but not cold. Inside, their daughters slept peacefully, finally siblings in every way that mattered. No more custody battles, no more fear of loss, no more wondering if they belonged. Just 2 little girls who'd lost parents but found each other, who'd gained a family through the most unexpected circumstances. Do you think Jessica would approve? Mara asked, suddenly. Of us, I mean. Of me raising Sophie. Daniel had asked himself that question many times. I think Jessica would love you. She always said she wanted Sophie to have strong women in her life, to see what resilience and courage looked like. You embody both of those things. He squeezed Mara's hand. And I think she'd be grateful that Sophie has a mother who chooses to love her, who shows up every day, who helps me raise her to be kind and brave. I hope so, Mara said softly. What about Sarah? Do you think she'd approve of me? Sarah would adore you. She always told me I needed someone who could match my intensity, who wouldn't be intimidated by my independence, someone who could be a partner without trying to fix me. Mara smiled. You're exactly who she would have picked. They sat until the night grew too cold to stay outside, then went to bed in the house that was now officially theirs, in the life they'd built from the ruins of everything they'd lost. And when Daniel finally fell asleep with Mara beside him, he dreamed not of the past, but of the future. Of Sophie and Lily growing up together, of family dinners and homework help and dance recitals, of arguments and laughter and all the beautiful mundane moments that made up a life. He dreamed of choosing love over and over again every single day. And when he woke up the next morning to Lily jumping on the bed yelling, "Pancakes, Daddy, pancakes!" while Sophie climbed in on Mara's side demanding star shapes, make them star shapes, both girls having fully embraced their new family configuration, Daniel realized the dream had already come true. This was his life now, chaotic and loud and full of the kind of joy he'd thought he'd never feel again. Not a replacement for what he'd lost with Jessica, but something new and equally precious. A second chance at happiness, built on honesty and resilience and the radical choice to keep loving even after loss. All right, he said, laughing as 2 small bodies bounced enthusiastically. Star-shaped pancakes for everyone, but only if you both let us have 5 more minutes of sleep. 3 minutes, Lily negotiated with the seriousness of a toddler who'd learned from the best. 4, Sophie countered. Deal, Mara said, pulling both girls down into a group hug. 4 minutes, then pancakes. They lasted maybe 2 minutes before the girls started giggling and wiggling, before the morning descended into the controlled chaos that had become their normal. And as Daniel headed downstairs with his wife and daughters, as he started pulling out ingredients while Mara made coffee and the girls set the table, he felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Gratitude. The deep bone-level knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. They'd all survived the worst. They'd all lost people they loved. They'd all learned that life could be cruel and unfair and devastating. But they'd also learned that love was stronger than loss. That family was what you built, not just what you were born into. That sometimes the most broken pieces could fit together in ways that made something stronger and more beautiful than what came before. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.